So UFC Fight Night Lewis versus Spivak is coming up not next weekend, but the weekend after. And to be fair, it may not be the most stacked card in the world, but somebody like me is very, very excited for it because the road to UFC finals are on this card, and I am personally super hyped about them. I was watching the road to UFC finals from the start when they're on UFC 275 in Singapore, and then I watched them in Dubai, and we finally got the finals. To my knowledge as well, if you didn't know this, the road to UFC finalists are both going to get a contract, so even the loser of the finals is still going to get a contract, but the winner is going to get a decent contract, and the loser is going to get like the standard Dana White's Contender Series winner contract, you know what I mean? So that's kind of what's going on there, and as always, if you wanted to bet on this card, you can always use my link just there down below. Let's just get straight into the fights. Tatsuro Taira versus Jesus Aguilar. Man, Jesus Aguilar been underrated big time by the bookies. You're getting Tatsuro Taira over minus 1,000 in some books. Like, dude, like, I know he's been looking dominant in his career, but he's not looking that dominant to be over minus 1,000 against a pretty solid grappler in Jesus Aguilar, who is a nasty, nasty guillotine. Look at all these guillotine wins that he's had of recent. 4 out of his last 5 wins have been by guillotine choke, including his very impressive win over Serghei, who I thought was going to win that fight on Dana White's Contender Series. And Jesus Aguilar, I swear he's shorter than 5'4". He has to be shorter than 5'4". But man, he's got such a funny style to watch, Jesus Aguilar, because he is quite short and he's going to look very short against Tatsuro Taira. He's a decent wrestler and a decent grappler, but the problem with being a decent wrestler and a decent grappler against Tatsuro Taira is, to be honest, Tatsuro Taira is low-key proven that he's probably one of the better grapplers that's outside of the top 15 in the flyweight division. I do think Tatsuro Taira is the better grappler in the matchup, so you do have to go with him in this fight. Do I think he's going to get a finish? Maybe. I'm not actually too sold on the submission yet. I do think he is going to get a finish or a decision, or maybe a submission or a decision, but Taira is much longer on the feet. Jesus Aguilar's got a pretty aggressive style on the feet. He's always shooting for takedowns, and I think that Taira is going to lock up either a submission later on into the fight or win a decision just with his superior grappling. This next one here, Jeoung Yeoung Park versus Denis Tiuliun. If you guys don't know, I'm a big fan of Denis Tiuliun. He's low-key one of my favourite fighters on the roster, and you might think that's really weird because he's not really a well-known fighter, he's not really a fighter that anyone really talks about, he doesn't have a very good record, and he is pretty old, but this guy stepped up and fought Aliaskhab Khizriev on super short notice when absolutely nobody would even fight him on a full camp. Like, people were pulling out of Aliaskhab Khizriev fights, they couldn't find a short notice replacement. So they signed the 10-5 Denis Tiuliun, who was 10-5 and on a 1-fight win streak, and he actually shows up in that fight. And in my opinion, he made a pretty good account for himself. He showed some pretty good defensive grappling. I believe he made it to the second round, but he did end up getting finished. But Denis Tiuliun on short notice had a pretty impressive fight, which is why I did pick him against Jamie Pickett. But we're talking about Jeoung Yeoung Park here. I think Jeoung Yeoung Park does win this fight. He's a very strong guy. He's a good striker with a good clinch game as well, and his grappling is not too bad either. I feel like Denis Tiuliun, his best chance to win this fight is probably get a KO on the feet. I think Jeoung Yeoung Park is going to be trying to wrestle and grapple with Denis, but as I said before, Denis's defensive grappling is very, very good, which is why the line is somewhat close. I feel like a lot of people might have thought it would be a little bit wider, but Jeoung Yeoung Park's only about minus 200 of a favourite. I am siding with the favourite in Jeoung Yeoung Park by decision. Tiuliun's a tough guy. I can definitely see him maybe winning this fight by KO, but I just personally don't think it's going to happen. Jeong Kim versus Mandy Bohm. Jeong Kim, I'm going to be brutally honest. She actually is a little bit lucky to still be on the roster. She's 1-5 in her last 6 fights on a 4-fight losing streak, but she did kind of get robbed against Priscilla Cachoeira. A close fight with Jocelyn Edwards. I did think Edwards won that fight, but maybe someone else disagrees. If you do, maybe let me know in the comments why, but it was a close fight, and Mandy Bohm, the reason why she's such a big underdog in this fight, because Jeong Kim's minus 260, which is not how I see the fight. Minus 260 for Jeong Kim is getting a bit wide. It's getting a bit wide, but Mandy Bohm, she's really not that great. Like, I picked her to beat Ariane Lipski, which was my downfall, but then I picked her to lose to Victoria Leonardo, which not many people did, to be fair, but Mandy Bohm, I feel like she fights like someone that thinks that they're better than they are. Like Mandy Bohm, like you've seen her boxing, she's doing like shoulder rolls and she's trying to do this and that, and it's like you're just doing too much. Like you're not that, you know what I mean? And she's just, I don't know what she's doing, dude. Ji Yeon Kim throws a lot of volume. She should have beaten Priscilla Cachoeira in my opinion. Ji Yeon Kim's the better striker in the matchup, and I think that's where the fight ends up taking place. So give me Ji Yeon Kim by decision. In this fight, I think she's going to snap that big losing streak that she's on. Now we're finally up to the first ever, the first ever Road to UFC final that's not Road to UFC Japan. Hyun-Sung Park versus Young-Guk Choi. I'm going with the underdog in this one here. I'm going with the fighter that is not undefeated. I'm going with Young-Guk Choi here. He's about a plus 180 underdog to Hyun-Sung Park. He's about minus 220, minus 230. Park is undefeated and he's going to have a great career, but Young-Guk Choi has proven me wrong time and time and time again. This guy coming to Road to UFC 4-1 with not really any good wins whatsoever. Fights Ramos Supandi, beats him pretty good, and then he fights Tiuliun, a former Dana White's Contender Series guy, a guy that was slated to win the entire thing, and he beats him up too. And Hyun-Sung Park, he submitted Top Noi Karam in the first round, but he got dropped in that fight. He got knocked down, and Top Noi Karam's a good striker, but he still got dropped. He beat up Jeremiah Serghei, but Jeremiah Serghei just wasn't really his level. I'm looking at Young-Guk Choi, and I like Young-Guk Choi's power, and I like his striking. I think he's going to beat up Hyun-Sung Park and get a decision. And he also is a big prospect of the Korean Zombie as well, a guy that Korean Zombie's been training for a long time, and I think it's all going to pay off. And he's going to beat the undefeated Hyun-Sung Park as an underdog and earn himself a pretty decent contract. And I think he's going to win the fight by decision. Young-Guk Choi by decision. So only 9% picking Choi. I don't know, man. Let me know what you think in the comments. Rinya Nakamura versus Toshiomi Kazama. I mean, you've got to go with Rinya Nakamura. I'm going to say it now. Rinya Nakamura is that Japanese superstar Dana White's been looking for. This guy is good. This guy is very, very, very good. And the line tells you he's minus 450 to plus 300 for Kazama. So Kazama could be a live underdog in this spot. We're talking about like a world wrestling champion in freestyle wrestling, a medalist in world championships in freestyle wrestling. We're talking about a legendary wrestler here. Well, I don't think he ever was a champion, actually. Sorry, he was a medalist anyway. It doesn't matter. He's a very, very good wrestler, but he's also such a solid striker as well. This guy puts it all together so well, and the UFC did so well to scout this guy because they only got him at 4-0 after he beat the Alejandro Caetano, who's 23-6 and fought good competition himself. Gugan Guzman submitted him with the first round, knocked out Shohei Noze in the first round, I believe, and then he's fighting Toshiomi Kazama, who got a bye in his most recent fight because his opponent missed weight. It's a tournament, you've got to make weight to continue. And he beat Kiramawali Mai Tatehiti. I definitely said that wrong, but I really did try. Yeah, and Kiramawali was actually one of the guys that I thought was going to win the whole thing because he has solid wins as well himself on his record, but Toshiomi Kazama at the end of the day got knocked out by a 2-2 guy 8 months ago still, and he's got a good judo background and he did look quite good in the grappling with Kiramawali, but I'm just going to have to go with Rinya Nakamura, the better wrestler, the better striker. I'm going to go with finish, Nakamura by KO or submission in this one here. Nakamura is the truth, and I'm going to be screaming his name from the rooftops, especially if he wins this fight. Zha Yi versus Jeoung Yeoung Lee is going to be such a good fight. I'm really, really looking forward to this one. Zha Yi really tried to intimidate Jeoung Yeoung Lee in the face-off after the final, and man, that's going to be good, man. I think the face-off's going to be good. Zha Yi's going to get people talking about him. They're going to maybe start off some sort of little beef sort of thing. I don't really know. But man, this is a good fight. I'm going with Jeoung Yeoung Lee. This guy is impressing me in so many ways, but it's kind of interesting because you're not seeing much of him. This guy fought in 2019, knocked someone out in 10 seconds who was undefeated, fought Bin Z after about 3 years off, submitted him in 36 seconds, and then fought Kai Lu and knocked him out in 42 seconds. This guy doesn't like spending time in the fights. He's got power for days and he's got grappling for days. Zha Yi, for the most part, is a decent grappler. 21-3. He does have good wins on his records, but some of his wins are a little bit sketch. He did lose to Kiramawali Mai Tatehiti, who is the guy that Toshiomi Kazama beat, actually. But he's on a good win streak now. Beat Keisuke Sasu, who I thought was going to beat him. And then he beat Koyomi Matsushima, and I think I picked Zha Yi to win that one because Koyomi Matsushima didn't look that good in his first fight, but solid win for him. But I'm going to be going Jeoung Yeoung Lee by finish, by KO or submission. This guy is electric. He's dangerous on the feet and he's dangerous on the ground. Big fan of Jeoung Yeoung Lee, and I think if he wins, he really could make a pretty big name out of himself. This next fight's fun, man. This next fight is very fun. Anshul Jubli. I'm going to be going with Anshul Jubli versus Saragih, and I am going with Anshul Jubli is what I was trying to say here. Anshul Jubli, to me, is a guy with a lot of potential. He really impressed me in his fight against Kyungpo Kim. I thought Kyungpo Kim was going to win that one, and before that, he wasn't really beating the best guys in his career. But my goodness, dude, this guy, if he wins, he really could maybe pave the way for Indian MMA to come quite big, because I don't know if you guys know this, but Indian fans of sports, they really do like get behind their teams, their athletes. They show up in numbers in the crowds. You see it all the time in like sports like cricket and hockey. But man, like Anshul Jubli, dude, this guy's a good prospect, and he didn't actually fight Patrick Showusami, because I think Patrick Showusami had to pull out. I think he was sick, or he missed weight. He had a bad weight cut, but he got one fight in, and he beat Kyungpo Kim, and that was a good win. He looked really good on the feet, when for the most part I would consider him as a pretty good grappler. He's pretty sloppy, is Anshul Jubli, but he's a guy with a lot of potential. I feel like if this guy joined a very big gym, trained with some really good training partners, you're going to have a really good prospect. And Anshul Jubli and Jeka Saragih, don't get me started on this guy. This guy's got power in the hands for days. He knocked out Wonbin Ki, and Wonbin Ki is a massive lightweight. Like, he was huge. He's the guy that called out Justin Gaethje after his first win on the road to UFC. He knocked out Pawan Mansinj, but Pawan Mansinj wasn't really all that great, and he knocked him out with a spinning back fist. This guy's got power in the hands, man. He really could knock out Anshul Jubli, but I've got to go Jubli by decision. He's a very slight favourite in the matchup. Jubli, I feel like he's a little bit unpolished. He is, but I feel like if you give him time, this guy could make rapid improvements. And if he can make rapid improvements, you're going to see this guy be a pretty good prospect at lightweight, and especially representing India, where you could see more Indian fighters in the UFC. I feel like it's a very exciting time for like these smaller regions where MMA isn't like super big right now. I know MMA is pretty big in Japan. It's really coming up in China and also South Korea. But even like you don't see too many fighters from, I believe it's Singapore, no, Indonesia, sorry, that Jeka Saragih's representing. You don't see many fighters, especially in the UFC, from India either. I'm looking forward to this next fight. Yusaku Kinoshita versus Adam Fugitt. My goodness, guys. Yusaku Kinoshita is an absolute brawler, dude. His one loss is by disqualification, by grabbing the cage, but it's not by grabbing the cage because he was defending his takedown. He was grabbing the cage because he knocked someone down. They were pretty much unconscious on the ground, and he grabbed the cage and started stomping on the head. Like, he started curb stomping them while they're unconscious on the ground. Absolute savagery. Knocked out Jose Henrique Souza, who was 5-0 and also like 6'5" or 6'3" or something ridiculous at 170 pounds. Yusaku Kinoshita is a brawler, man. I think he's going to lure Adam Fugitt into a brawl, who had a lot of success against Michael Morales before he did get finished. He took that fight on short notice as well, and he looked really good against Solomon Renfro, and you can't take that win away from him. That's a very good win, but I think Yusaku Kinoshita is going to turn this into a brawl. He's going to brawl with Adam Fugitt, and I think he's going to get the knockout with his boxing. So give me Yusaku Kinoshita. This guy's an absolute brawler. He's a fun fighter to watch. He's a guy that's going to make a big name for himself, in my opinion. I'm really looking forward to Yusaku Kinoshita in the UFC, and he is a -250 favourite or so, which is, I don't know, man. Maybe it's a little bit wide because Adam Fugitt's going to be underrated in the matchup, but Kinoshita's just a brawler, dude. He's going to go for a KO. The long-awaited return from the Korean super boy Doo-Ho Choi. He hasn't fought for 3 years' time. I think he was doing the military service in South Korea. I could be incorrect on that one, but I believe he was doing the mandatory military service. He's coming back against Kyle Nelson. Winnable fight for Doo-Ho Choi, in my opinion. Kyle Nelson, to be brutally honest, man, he just hasn't looked too incredible recently. He come back after about 2 years' time, and Jai Herbert just kind of beat him up a little bit. And I think that Doo-Ho Choi is probably going to do the same thing. I think Doo-Ho Choi is going to win a decision here. It would have been a lot much more hyped up matchup if it was in South Korea, which was where the card was initially going to take place. But the Korean zombie is injured. It couldn't make the card, which is a shame. So hopefully they do try and do a South Korea card again. I feel like maybe we could do a South Korea card in the middle of the year. Just Korean zombie versus, I don't know, maybe like Edson Barboza or something. But yeah, I'm looking forward to the fight. I like Doo-Ho Choi in the matchup. We haven't seen him fight for 3 years, so when this guy was on top, he was on top. You know, he was inducted into the Hall of Fame for his fight with Cub Swanson. He got knocked out as a massive favourite against Charles Jourdain, and that really put Charles Jourdain on the map. But I like Doo-Ho Choi striking here. I do think he's going to get a finish over Cole Nelson. And I think he just wins. Marcin Tybura versus Blagoy Ivanov. Did I mention the odds? Doo-Ho Choi is about -200 favourite. Marcin Tybura versus Blagoy Ivanov. You've got to go with Marcin Tybura in this matchup, in my opinion. Blagoy Ivanov, he's younger than I thought he was. When I thought of Blagoy Ivanov, I thought he was going to be almost 40. And Marcin Tybura is the older fighter in this matchup. Dude, what is going on? What is reality? I did not expect that whatsoever. But Tybura is coming off that massive win over Alexander Romanov, which should have been a draw because Romanov 10-aced him in the first round for sure, and then Tybura won the last 2 rounds, but it is what it is. Yeah, I can just see this is like 2 wrestlers at heavyweight. And Blagoy Ivanov, I think he's coming to that really boring win over Marcos. Yeah, it is. Marcin Tybura is the better wrestler in this one here. I think he's going to be the one that's going to be getting the takedowns. Blagoy Ivanov, his wrestling style kind of is just kind of working against the cage for the most part, really. And I just think that we're going to see Marcin Tybura look to use his wrestling and actually get takedowns on top of Blagoy. His striking ain't too bad, but it's nothing too crazy. Tybura -200, I think that's a pretty fair line, and I kind of like it. He's also going to be a bit bigger. Blagoy's only 5'11". Dude, that's pretty tough. Yeah, got to go with Tybura by decision. In this fight, Da-Un Young versus Devin Clark. Da-Un Young coming off that KO loss to Justin Jacoby, which is a little bit of a shame of a loss. I was looking forward to maybe Da-Un Young making a run up the rankings, but he's still young. I think that Da-Un Young, he's got a bright future, man. I think a good turnaround fight for him is definitely fighting Devin Clark here, who is going to make it scrappy. He's going to try and impose his own game, but I think that Da-Un Young's stand-up in his boxing, it's going to be a little bit too much here for Devin Clark. He's got the longer range. He's also a bit taller as well, 6'4". And he also knocked out Kennedy Nzechukwu with elbows. And that's a very well-aging win because Kennedy Nzechukwu is on a pretty good win streak right now. And he's got a win recently over Ion Kutalaba in the main event, so that's cool. He's got a win over William Knight as well, which is cool. That draw to Sam Alvey still amazes many people. But I do think Da-Un Young's going to finish Devin Clark at some point. And Devin Clark, he just got ground and pounded out 3 months ago, so that's not too long ago, really. He did knock out William Knight, which was somewhat good for him because I think that was like a heavyweight fight, and William Knight weighed like 260 pounds or something crazy. Now we're on to the main event. The pick hasn't changed. I'm going to go with the favourite in Serghei Spivak, and the favourite in the matchup in the co-main is Da-Un Young. He's about a -250 favourite. I think Serghei Spivak, his striking's not that great though, is it? And his striking defense ain't all that flash either when the fight's on the feet for too long. But to be fair, his striking, this is Spivak I'm talking about. The striking's not bad, but it's not great, you know what I mean? It's nothing to write home about. It's nothing to be like, oh man, I think Serghei Spivak is going to outstrike Derrick Lewis in the matchup. Because I don't think it's going to happen, dude. I think that Serghei Spivak is going to look to use the wrestling against Derrick Lewis. Put him on his back, use his ground and pounds, and somewhat decent submission ability. I don't know if Spivak's got a submission in a while, though. He's normally just a ground and pound dude, but he does have pretty good submission ability if he wants to go for it. He submitted Tai Tuivasa in 2019, which is a good one. He does have submissions earlier on into his career. 6 wins by submission, actually. Maybe I need to stop being a little bit less of an idiot and maybe stop doubting myself and what I know about fighters. But whatever. I think Spivak is going to take Derrick Lewis down. I know you don't want to hear it. I know you probably want to hear me pick Derrick Lewis, but I just realised, though, Derrick Lewis could time a really nasty uppercut on Serghei Spivak, but Serghei Spivak doesn't really go for those diving takedowns. He punches you up against the cage, and Derrick Lewis is very strong in the clinch, don't get me wrong, and then he kind of goes for trips. So, yeah, I think Serghei Spivak wins this one here. I think he's going to take down Derrick Lewis. I would be very interested to see if this would have sold out in an arena in South Korea. I don't think it would have. Maybe if they put like some big names on the card that are just internationally big, like a big co-main event that maybe isn't Da-Un Young. Do you think they could have still sold it in an arena? I don't know if they could have. I mean, there's 2012 fights on the card. There definitely would have been space to do it. But, yeah, Derrick Lewis versus Serghei Spivak, I don't think main event by itself could have sold out in an arena in South Korea for sure. But anyway, I think I got a little bit sidetracked there. I like Serghei Spivak, dude. I like his takedown style against Derrick Lewis. He's not going to be lunging forward and just waiting to get kneed in the face or uppercutted by Derrick Lewis or or just hit with anything that you get hit with diving forward. Derrick Lewis, and who's he lost to? Pavlovich and Tuivasa. I mean, that happens. He went to war with Tuivasa as well. It's a shame that he's in the Apex, man. I like Derrick Lewis in front of crowds, but happens, dude. I think Serghei Spivak is going to be going for those takedowns against Lewis. I think he's going to take him down, ground and pound. Maybe look for a submission. I don't think Lewis has ever been submitted, though. Am I correct in saying that? I feel like he's got a crazy stat like that. He's never been submitted. Am I correct? Yeah, he's only ever lost by submission once. I was almost correct. Who did he lose to by submission? Daniel Cormier? Oh, dude. Yeah, dude. Derrick Lewis's grappling may be somewhat underrated. Anyway, I'm going with Spivak, ground and pound TKO. It's going to be a finish. Either way, I don't see it going 5 rounds. And if it does go 5 rounds, maybe Lewis wins, dude. We're seeing him in shape going for that run. He looks like he's lost a lot of weight, but I've got to go Spivak by finish, unfortunately, in this one here. He's the favourite in the matchup too. Alright, I'll see you in the next one. Thank you so much for watching.